Hey guys, welcome to A Drama Diving. I know it looks a little bit different this time, but we got a surprise for you. We have guest hosts and a bunch of ladies that are going to talk about women in diving and a bunch of different stories and kind of possible hardships they've had going through the industry, and just kind of chat about how we can welcome more women into the industry. So as I kind of hinted on Facebook, one of my friends, John, who's actually sitting here to watch the show with me as I produce from the background, got me Blue Label Johnny Walker. So we're going to pour out a little bit of that. And I know that the ladies have got drinks already, so I got to catch up. So I'm going to pour that out. But cheers and thanks for joining. We're going to bring Allie on, who is our host right now. Hey, Allie.
Hey.
Allie is a helper at the shop. She went to SUNY ESF, where I'm the dive safety officer. And she's going to host tonight for you guys. Go ahead and feel free to add into the comments. I'm going to be manning the comments and throwing it up there for everybody to see. Allie, are you all set and ready to go?
Yeah, I'm all ready.
All right. So I'm going to drop myself out of the stream and add all of our guests in. Good?
Perfect.
Good.
Alrighty. There we go. So today we're going to be talking about women in diving for our episode of A Dream of Diving, and I'm very excited because of all the guests that we have today. If we wouldn't mind going around and sharing just like a little background about everyone, that would be really great. Do you want to start, Jenny?
Sure. I don't know how much background you want.
Just a little is fine.
Okay, so I own a dive shop in Western PA, Scott Scuba. My husband and I have been running it, or we owned it for 2 years, and I've managed it for about 5 now. And I'm a PADI IDC staff instructor.
Cool. Heather?
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Knowles, and together with my husband, I run Northern Atlantic Dive Expeditions and the dive boat Gauntlet. I'm an active technical diver and instructor interested in caves, wrecks, photography, and been diving since I was about 10 years old. So it's been a lifelong thing for me.
Awesome. Mare?
Excellent. I'm Meredith Tangway. I'm a GUE instructor, originally from Boston, now based in Florida and Hawaii. And we're a team of professionals. So I have a kind of alternative shop, as some of you guys learned about in the last podcast. And I teach recreational, cave, and tech.
Awesome. How about Jen?
Hi, I am Jen. I am a brand new instructor for South Jersey Scuba. Thank you. I've been diving for a couple of years, and I'm pretty excited to be a new instructor for all the brand new people. Yay!
Awesome. How about you, Jamie?
Yes, my name is Jamie, and I am in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, close to Toronto. And I'm a TDI instructor, and myself and my other half run a small scuba instruction and service business at the moment, based out of Kitchener, called JTech.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right. Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Jill, another fellow Canadian and full-time underwater filmmaker, photographer, explorer, and the explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. And I guess I've been diving since the time of clay backpacks and leather tanks.
Awesome. And okay, so as Jason said, my name is Allie. I just graduated from SUNY ESF, and I started diving with Deep Stop Scuba about 6 months ago. So we're going to start off with just like some basic questions. So what inspired all of you to start diving? Okay, who starts?
I was definitely always a big time watcher of documentaries. So anything I could get my hands on, and I just wanted to see that world. And ever since I was a little kid, I remember watching them and just hoping that someday I could see it myself.
Same. National Geographic videos all the way.
Jacques Cousteau for me.
Nice. For me, anything that was narrated by David Attenborough. Crazy about it. So he does a lot of like underwater stuff too. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, for me, my story is a little different. I grew up around the water. We always had a pool in the backyard, but scuba was never really something that I had thought about, probably because neither of my parents swam and they were always afraid of us jumping in the pool. So it wasn't until a little bit later that I was planning a trip to go to Australia. And a friend of mine said, you should go and dive the Great Barrier Reef. So a couple months before leaving for Australia, I got certified, and like literally dive number 5 was jumping in on the Great Barrier Reef for me. And then I got back home, and one of the girls that I was actually in my scuba class was doing her advanced the following spring. And so I jumped in on that, and there was no looking back. I had no idea at the time what I was getting into, but I have absolutely zero regrets about it.
General consensus on that.
Well,
Don't know what we're getting into, but we love it.
Yeah.
I had always been around water and things, and when I got into college, I had to take PE credit, and I sucked at bowling, so I took scuba. And
It's a natural second choice.
thus begins the story. You know, start with some good old upstate New York early May certification dives, and set the hook for the suck early on.
I guess I must be the last one. I just was like a water baby. I loved the water from as far back as I can remember. And my father was a diver, or still is, I guess. Not as active anymore, but he would go diving every Sunday, and I was totally fascinated with his gear, and I really wanted to come diving with him, but I didn't know how. So I would really just like wait for him to come home and then take me in the pool and let me play with the last 500 psi in his tank if he brought a tank home with that much. And then, I really just kept chipping away at him until he really, got me formal training and started taking me out diving with him. But I guess it was seeing the Andrea Doria documentary with, I guess it was Geraldo and the state. I saw that and I was just completely hooked on wreck diving. And I said, I'm going to dive the Andrea Doria one day. And everyone's like, sure you are. And that was it for me. I was, on a mission after that, and eventually did get to dive the Andrea Doria. But that was, I would say, probably the thing that really inspired me was seeing that film and just getting hooked on wreck diving right away.
That's awesome. So were there any roadblocks that any of you guys encountered to like joining the dive industry or to getting where you guys are now in your careers? Jill, do you want to go first? You were laughing, so.
That's what happens when you laugh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there are definitely a few roadblocks. Yeah, I mean, early when I was trying to figure out how I could make diving a career, I thought about commercial diving, and I went to a weekend workshop, spent like a lot of money on a weekend workshop. And the instructor, I was already a scuba instructor at that point, but the commercial diving instructor told me there was no space for women in commercial diving.
Wow.
And I was, I was young and not confident enough, and just kind of went, oh, okay, yeah, never mind. I'll do it another way, kind of thing. Taking away from that lesson, I realized how easy it is to absolutely slam a door shut, especially for a young woman. And sometimes those doors never get opened up again. Since that time, there's been plenty of bias, both intentional and unintentional bias, but that exists in all aspects of society today. I mean, I don't think it would be unfamiliar to, you know, a professional cyclist or a professional anything really. So it's our cross to bear, I suppose. But it's inspiring, like, to see more and more women all the time, and more women in leadership, because in my opinion, that's what it's going to take. Yeah, a young woman diver needs to look up and see Meredith and go, oh, yeah, I want to be her when I grow up, right? I think that's just so important. Role models, mentoring.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. How about Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like Jill, there's always roadblocks, whether intentional or not. You know, I remember when I got hired on at the shop, it you know, I was told because they needed a female instructor. So that's how I got my foot in the door. But you know, and at first you think, okay, it's fine. You know, at least I'm getting my foot in the door. And, you know, then you start to see some of the roadblocks or some of the obstacles, maybe a better word for it. You know, and things were great at first, but, you know, then I'm a person that will speak up if things aren't going the right way. And so for me, you know, I was told that, you know, I should be quiet, I shouldn't speak up. And that's just not the way I roll. So there was a little bit of, you know, headbutting and things like that happened. But, you know, at the end of the day, again, I don't regret it. I'm not going to be quiet if something's not right. And I'm going to do what I feel is right. And, you know, I ended up leaving that situation, and I had another door that opened, and that was fine. And I didn't leave by my choice, but I still had that other door that opened up. So I took advantage of it. And so to me, I've always kind of looked at it as, you know, one door will close and who knows how many more will open up. And you just got to keep a positive attitude, because if you don't keep that positive attitude, it's very easy to get, you know, beat down. And I never wanted to be beat down.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else have any similar experiences?
I think for me it was challenging in a couple of ways, getting started in a more professional capacity, because not only was I female, but I was young, and you know, I was in my early 20s, and you know, a lot of people didn't know my background. Like, I grew up around boats, and my father, you know, is a diesel engine mechanic by, you know, his trade, and so for me, I was always really comfortable around boats. I spent a lot of time on boats. I ran boats when I was young. But, you know, when I sort of popped up on the grid in the late 90s, early 2000s, people were like, who is she? And, you know, I felt like I always had to overcome assumptions. And I agree with a lot of what Jill said. You know, there's conscious bias, and there's unintentional bias. There's all of these things that exist, and they exist outside of diving, and you know, we encounter them every day. But certainly you feel it more acutely when you're in a setting like diving, where, you know, the women are a minority in terms of their presence and their role. And I think, you know, for me, I really, really struggled with it for a long time. And even, you know, I stayed away from discussions like this because I just couldn't decide how I felt about it. But I think what I had to do was just really keep true to myself. And I think, Jamie, you kind of hit on that. Like, you just gotta do you. And if you make the right choices, people will respect that. And then, you know, you will eventually sort of be seen the way you should be seen. At least that's the hope, right? And that's what I've always tried to do.
Yeah. And if you do you, there's nothing that you're ever going to regret that you did, right? You got to be true to yourself, in my opinion. And at some point you just have to stop caring what everybody else thinks, because it's not going to get you anywhere.
It's so true. I mean, because those like sexist behaviors and comments are not about you. They're about the person that made them. I mean, it takes a while before you can kind of like get past that and not give a crap about it anymore. Like, just a couple of years ago, I had a student, and he was starting his journey into cave diving, and we'd actually spent 3 days in the open water at Ginny because things weren't going so well. And like on about day 3, we're having lunch, and someone who knows this guy comes up to him and he goes, "Dude, what are you up to?" And he's like, oh, I'm starting my cave diving class, and man, I'm working on all the skills and stuff, and god damn, it's hard, And the guy turns to me and he goes, well, pretty lady, if you want to go for a little cavern dive while he's off on his class, then I'll take you for a spin. And I'm like, oh, why, thank you. But I thought, really?
Well, I hope that those of us who've had to deal with those comments are maybe, whacking away some of the weeds so that those that come behind us don't have nearly as many. And I feel like there's where I may be a little bit different than you guys is I didn't get into professional diving until, decently into my 30s. And so it's a third career for me. So I had already, a lot more confidence, a lot more stubborn. And I had already spent a large part of my prior career in real estate where I was a 20-something real estate agent where like doing real estate under 50 like wasn't a thing that happened. So I got like the young prejudice, even though it was all women. But yeah, I still look back and think of even things that were said to me 5 years ago on how unbelievably arcane and out of touch with reality that some of those things were. And I'd like to think that things have changed even in the last 5 years. But all we can do is try to endure and not perpetuate that. And to some extent, maybe it's motivated me to be better. Because, you can't just be, to some extent, you can't just be the same as the guy's skill level to get accepted. There's almost an unwritten higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I also think though that that's not always a good thing. It's not a good thing for us collectively as women and even individually. I know people who know me well will tell you that I have a level of self-criticism that is probably not so good. But some of it's just me as a person, and some of it I think is probably a consequence of being in that environment a lot where you don't get the benefit of the doubt. You have to demonstrate that you're not only good enough, but you're better than just average. And that's what it sometimes takes to be accepted. And I think that's the thing we've got to change as women. Like, I think the message we need to send and the example we need to set is that being female is a distinction without a difference. And, we don't have to prove anything because there's nothing to prove. That would be the ideal, right? And it takes, I think, role models like, the many women and some of you guys here, especially younger women who are starting out that can really lead in that way.
I see a lot of the age prejudice along with maybe being like a smaller female. Like I get a lot of, you can't lift that tank or you can't do that. And then I do, and I'll walk around with my doubles on my back and carry a stage and be like, watch me, I got this. So it's kind of a proving myself sort of thing. Like I want to show you I'm just as tough. You don't need to baby me because I'm a young girl.
Yeah. I think definitely for me, it's more of the age than gender. Probably for like my career as like a dive professional, I've punched with like the same shop. So everyone in like the staff has been really inclusive. Like I haven't really felt any gender inequality in the sense of the term until, or even really thought about it until Jason brought it up of like, hey, do you want to do a podcast on women in diving? I'm like, sure, we can talk about it. So like from my experience, like especially with South Jersey Scuba, we have a great, number of women in diving. I dive with a bunch of girls like all the time. I even chat with them like daily.
I would echo that, but I also feel like I got no sexism when I became a recreational instructor. But the second I flipped over into cave and tech, the background changed.
Mm.
See, I actually kind of found the different, and maybe it's because I just have a great group of guys and divers here. Like recreational, I see more men trying to prove that they're tougher than the girls. And then our tech guys and our cave guys are, they just let me be part of the group. And I don't feel left out there, but it just may be kind of where we are. I see it more on the recreational side sometimes, I think.
Yeah, that's where I kind of felt it as well, more on the recreational side. And that's, kind of where I felt the most obstacles, because I think by the time I got into the tech side, I had a good support system at that time. And I had met I was very, fortunate to have met the right group of people, I think, that didn't look at me as necessarily being a female. They looked at me as being a diver and somebody that wanted to dive and improve and move forward. And they just accepted that at that point. And the others that didn't, well, I had no part of it. I didn't want to be part of it. So I tended towards where I was accepted and could fit in, and there was not that same judgment.
I'm wondering too if some of ours, or I've wondered it often, is there was no tech program at this store at all before Josh and I took over. So a lot of our guys that are now tech divers and cave divers, I taught them. So they've kind of maybe always viewed us as one of them, and somebody who's just as capable as anybody else, because maybe we started them down that path. I'm not sure.
I feel like locally, we've or at least locally, like I feel like we have a great community here, and the men in this community who are hopefully watching, are really fabulous and supportive. And I think some of that stuff sort of ran out, and I think, I don't feel it here, and so sometimes it makes me forget that it exists. But all you have to do is travel, and especially to other parts of the world, where I think there is whether it's technical or recreational, there's a level of sexism that's still there, and it's obviously rooted in cultures and in education, and especially if you go places where it's really patriarchal society, you might feel it, especially if you're on a boat, like I was once in Malta, and there were like 14 guys on the boat and me. And they were like, not all that friendly at first. And it was just kind of like, I was there with my rebreather and my camera, and they didn't have a camera, and so they're kind of looking at me like, I don't know. It was sort of a cold feeling, right? And it was obvious that, there's not a lot of women like that showing up on boats. And these guys were all from the UK. And it was just, I was very aware. Let's just say that I was the only female there. Now, of course, by the end of the week, they were totally cool. Come over, have a beer, and we all sort of, broke down those barriers. But they were there for sure at first. And I think locally, I don't feel that ever anymore. But traveling, sometimes I think you can still really, depending on what you're doing and who you're with, I think it's sometimes really still present.
Yeah. So I don't know if someone mentioned this. I think someone might have. But have you guys seen like a decrease in obstacles and things like that as time goes on? And do you think that's because you're progressing in your dive career, or just because we're getting, I guess, more progressive?
I haven't had any obstacles to begin with.
I think a lot of it, I tend to notice more or less depending on how the woman handles it. If she's more outgoing and willing to prove herself, I don't think I don't know. From my vision, I don't see somebody getting as much. Like, I don't experience it as much, but maybe somebody who's more timid. I see it in some of my students who are very laid back females. They tend to get more, more roadblocks, I guess.
But isn't that kind of based off of their skill and personality, not necessarily their being a woman?
That's true. Very true. It could be.
True. All right. So this is kind of a different angle, but have you guys had any challenges when it comes to finding gear that like fits appropriately or anything like that?
Wetsuit.
Say that again. I see it a lot at the shop fitting other women. If you have any type of curve, you just can forget wetsuits. And standard fit dry suits, they just don't exist. Just learn the word custom.
Back in the 1990s, like we didn't have women's gear at all. In fact, we used to say that if there was anything that was for women, it was designed under the SAP principle, which is small and pink. So it was exactly the same thing with the guys, but it was just little and it was pink, right? And I ran around the DEMA trade show to different manufacturers with a measuring tape. And I said, you know, dude, look at this. Let's measure the length of a woman's torso. Measure mine. I mean, I'm 5'10", but my torso is so much shorter than a guy's, you know. Guys have thick necks. And so their dry suit, you know, seal comes over their head and fits around their neck, where the woman has a tiny neck. And by the time she rips the hair off her head and the skin off her nose, then the seal's too big on her neck, you know. Her shoulders are tapered. The man's shoulders are square. You know, we've got boobs up here. You know? And I ran around literally manufacturer to manufacturer and said, you know, wake up. We're not the same shape. And if we don't have like good equipment that fits, that makes us comfortable and warm, then we won't dive. And so, I mean, I think that was right after that. It was really the beginning of some of the first women's BCDs and things, but we still have a ways to go for sure. You know, more and more it seems to be addressed. But the interesting thing is, a few years back, that there was a study done, and women actually make the bulk of buying decisions about scuba gear, whether it's for a woman or for a man. Like whether the woman was a diver or not, the two of them are in the shop together, and the woman is influencing the sale. And so still, like, we definitely have a long way to go. I mean, like I said, I'm 5'10". I mean, I've been a body double for men in Hollywood movies, right? But you know, nothing fits even me. Like I could take something that theoretically is the right height, but it doesn't have the right curves, like you say. So it's so important. Because if it doesn't fit and it's not comfortable, then we can't swim properly. We can't trim ourselves out properly. We're not warm enough, and we don't want to stay in the water.
I found that problem with side mount recently. I can't get our D-rings to sit. They don't sit where they would on a man. And I've been so struggling with that, trying to experiment.
Thank you for bringing that up, because side mount is definitely one of the sort of number one culprits these days. Like there's a lot of people that are trying to standardize side mount and say, you must use this length hose and that length hose and do this, and it must clip here, and it has to be, you know, 6 inches from this and 14 inches from that, and the bands need to be way down here. And I'm always like, no, you know, side mount is like fitting someone like an elite road racer on a bicycle. It's personal, whether you're a male or female. And again, because of our really short torsos, things are very different for women in side mount to get the trim right. And none of these, like, you know, good for all philosophies work when it comes to side mount, in my opinion. The harness might be great, but when it comes to fitting the tanks and getting the bands right and perfecting the trim, it's very personal.
Agreed.
I also think
really fiddling with mine.
I think one of the other issues too is it's definitely gotten a lot better than it was 15 years ago, with one size backplate and, you know, no overboard discharges for women, like major things that have enabled the game to change. But still, you know, one thing that the industry could get better at is, and it's not just to the benefit of women, but learning how to adjust gear properly, adjust weighting properly, body positioning properly for different body types. And of course, women present one of the major body types, but I've also had short dudes who kind of fit into my mold of how I may adjust equipment for a short woman. So I think that's one of the things that's maybe under practiced in the industry, is kind of assuming that everybody is a typical male build 5'10". Roll with it.
No, you're so right. I mean, that is a huge opportunity for dive stores. I mean, it's fantastic to see on this call, you know, women working and owning dive stores, because when there is a woman in the dive store, then there's a recognition of that. But I think that customization and personalization is an enormous opportunity in tough times for dive stores to really specialize in that fit and trim and everything else that goes with it.
But I do appreciate all the different designs and colors that are coming out now.
Yes.
Very appreciate that. No one wants black on black anymore.
Yeah,
No one needs black
I
on
can-
black anymore.
Can I push back on that? Stop only giving me options that are pink, purple, and lime green. Give me strong primary colors.
Yes, I
Come on.
agree. No more pink. Too much.
What happened to
pink.
yellow? Everybody's forgotten about yellow wetsuits or anything besides fin that's yellow.
Oh, I see
That's true.
David's asking, how can manufacturers do better? There's a really fantastic example that
There's a
came
whole
out
color
recently.
spectrum.
Fourth Element took their entire staff of women of all different sizes and put on the Fourth Element clothes, and then took a whole bunch of pictures and said, you know, here we are. I'm wearing a 14, or I'm wearing an 8, or I'm wearing a tall, or I'm wearing a whatever. And I thought that was really empowering, that whole ad campaign they did. I thought, you know, kudos for that one. So I think, yeah, manufacturers could start using real women. Like, I don't want to see like big boobed like models that aren't even divers in catalogs. Like, give me a freaking break. I mean, the average demographic for women is much older now. I want to stimulate the young market too, but please, really, like, can we just have some real women? Look at the real women in this broadcast here. Like, they should be the models in the catalogs, you know? Like, gosh.
Yeah, and I think if we get stuff that we like and fits us well, then we're going to talk about it, and it's just going to keep growing from there, right? Because we always love what we have, right? We're not going to wear something we don't like, and the more we talk about it, the better it's going to be, and maybe more of the manufacturers will start picking up on that stuff. You know, we're not all the same. You know, I would never fit into anything that was not custom. You know, being 5 foot tall and having more of a, we'll call it an athletic build. You know. I never fit into anything, so it was always custom. And you know, if I did find something I'd fit into, I'd buy like 4 of them. So when they wore out, I still had something to go back to.
You know, to answer something towards David, he asked about how the manufacturers can do better. And playing off what you said, Jamie, they could offer more custom options, kind of destigmatize custom things. You know, it's as soon as you hear the word custom, everybody cringes and go, "Oh, that's going to cost me a lot of money." Like, if we could bring that more into the market of an option right off the bat, because we've just been talking about it, we're all different. So why should we all have to fit into that same 3 size, small, medium, large? You know, maybe try to bring that to a more mass production option. I don't know.
No, I think that's a great idea. Does anyone else have any gear stories, I guess? Horror stories about their gear not fitting?
But when I started diving, you know, I was young and small, and there was no women's gear, there was no kids gear, and so you know, my wetsuits were always like hand me down $5 grab bin mismatches, until I started kind of slowing down, growing, and you know, probably around 16, you know, like I was not like needing a new size every year or so. So I was going to get my first wetsuit. And, you know, Jill mentioned it earlier. You know, the options were so limited, and there was no internet or anything like that. So you went into the dive store and you got what you got and what they had. And all they had for women's stuff was a wetsuit with a bikini cut top. So it was a 2-piece wetsuit, bikini cut, hot pink. And I absolutely would not have it. Now, my mother happened to be in the store, and Jill also hit on this too. She was the one deciding what I was getting. And my father was like, well, let her get what she likes. She's like, no, we're getting the pink suit. And I said, absolutely not. I don't care. So I ended up getting a men's suit because it had the step-in Farmer John style, and it wasn't a bikini cut. And it was lime green, and it did not fit me that well, but I would not have a pink bikini cut suit. I didn't care. And so, you know, that's always kind of like what I think back to when I think about how things have evolved. Like, there's some great stuff like small back plates, which, you know, I now use, and that makes a huge difference for me. But I've always sort of struggled with, you know, women's gear that focuses more on like colors than the features that it really needs. And I wish that if I, could answer the question about what manufacturers can do, is they can address what women really need. And I don't think it's a lady's, signature branding on the suit. I think it's the customization without compromising the features. And that's what will really benefit women.
I have a story about a wetsuit that I bought. So I bought a brand new wetsuit because I was heading down to dive a deep site, and I wanted a brand new warm wetsuit, 2-piece, and it was pink and turquoise, and it was bikini cut. It had like the beaver tail that came around and like eye bolted in place and everything else. And I did literally one 400-foot deep dive, and it was crushed to like tissue paper from the dive. And I got back home and I called up the manufacturer. Like, I owned a dive store at the time, and I called up the sales rep, and I'm like, dude, this brand new suit I just bought, it's useless. There is no thermal capacity left in this suit after one dive. And he goes, well, what did you do with it? And I said, well, I did one 400-foot deep dive. And he goes, oh, it's not designed for that. And I'm like, what? He goes, no, I mean, it's a women's suit, he said to me. And I'm like, yeah. And he said, we assume that the average woman is going to wear this 10 times on recreational dives and then not dive it anymore. So that's the level of manufacturing that it's been made to. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So a man's suit in the same line was designed with completely different principles, and we were assumed that we were just going to throw it out after a few dives.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have another comment from Eric Fine on Facebook. It says, if manufacturers don't include women in the design process, they're missing the point. I can definitely agree.
Some do. I mean, Bear in Canada, Bear is, well, at least last time I was out there, they had an all-women's design team for their suits. All women.
That's great.
That's nice.
I think Aqualung had a pretty high percentage of women, at least for their women's line anyway as well.
But are they divers as well is the question.
What was that?
Are they divers as well? If they are designing it, I mean, great, they could be designers, but are they divers as well? Kind of makes it go hand in hand.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah,
and divers at all levels, not just recreational.
Yeah.
You want female cave and tech divers, you need to include that in your concept for your women's gear.
For sure. All right, and another comment from David Stevens on Facebook. It says, Bear, all women design team is still there.
Cool.
It's really cool.
Yay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They're awesome. I mean, if you're in Vancouver, just go for a tour and meet the team. They're really nice, smart people.
Cool. So I have another big question that we could probably work on. So what are some ideas that you guys think would be effective in encouraging more women to join the dive industry, but also continue diving throughout the years instead of coming a couple times and then quitting?
Well, for me, at least for our shop and our community, it's not really about, oh, she's a girl diving or he's a guy diving. It's kind of more about community. We all just want to go out and go diving. No one cares. We just want to go diving, especially in 2020. Everyone just want to get out of here and go diving. So I think for us, it's not just about, the guys are, subjecting women to certain ideas or anything. It's in general for the whole population. It has to be men and women giving each other, respect. So it's not just guys, singling out women. Women can also single out women. We've all been there, middle school, high school, college, cliques, right? So it's all about community and, everyone having fun with each other, making friends, making dive buddies, learning new skills, getting new experiences, seeing majestic sea flaps.
I agree with that. We see a lot of people come in through the door who are interested in scuba, and they come in the shop kind of timid, whether it's man or woman. And they want to do it and they tell me they can't though because they don't have anybody to do it with, and I spend so long convincing them that you don't need somebody to do it with. They have a strong community, and then by the time they finish their open water dives, they already have friends. And I think the biggest thing that I see people coming back is when they do start making those friends right off the bat, and when they have other people to talk about diving and they realize it's a community versus just getting over that fear of being all by yourself.
Right. When I first started diving, I did not know how big the scuba world was. I thought it was pretty small. And then I started getting into it, and literally my very first dive buddy was a girl. Marlena, shout out to you. Love you.
What about anyone else? Any ideas? And it can definitely be for retaining men and women for scuba diving, just keeping that base of people.
Oh, I think Jen hit the nail on the head. Especially in today's difficult world, having a dive shop, you've got to be a specialist. You've got to create a sense of community. It's not about competing about the next shop down the street. In fact, every shop builds the community.
Oh, come on. It's all about we're the best shop.
No. But yeah, it's just all about belonging. Feeling welcome.
I agree, Jill. I mean, we have to take the competition out of it. We're all in here to build the sport, whether it's for men, women, whoever, right? If you want to do it and want to be a part of it, you have to be welcoming and have the events, have the dives, invite the new person that, just got certified out to your next dive that's appropriate for them. And who cares, because if they are timid, then maybe that's their foot in the door to open up and start making new friends and build and grow. And that's the only way the industry is going to get bigger, and so that we can have these things that we want, like the proper fitting gear for women and whatnot. We just have to keep making it this all inclusive place where there's no judgments, and
Right on.
It sounds silly, but one of the things we found that builds that community is including non-divers too. Like a lot of the times you have one person in the family that dives, and when I invite their family to our events, it changes the whole dynamic. And then I start seeing that person more because the other people want to come into the shop, even if it's just a chat, even though they may not dive for whatever reason. So that's grows community a lot too, what we found.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jenny. I mean, we have a male diver, and his wife doesn't dive. She's never going to dive, but we've lovingly given her the nickname Shore Support because she comes along on the trips because she just wants to be a part of it. And we've grown into great friends, and she'll do this stuff while we're off boat diving, and we'll come back and have this nice spread of lunch, and we're also thankful for it because the last thing you want to do is have to go and make yourself dinner or lunch or whatever it is. So, but she loves doing that. We love having her around, and really it's just about encouraging the non-divers as well, whoever they are.
Right.
And then we sucker them into getting it diving.
I think
Right? Totally. We'll bring you into this world.
what I think we can also do is, as educators, get better to teaching to different learning styles and different personalities, right? So, and that's not just for women. I've had plenty of men come through classes with low confidence. And do you have an instructor that's good at properly building up somebody's confidence? And also just the way people learn differently. So the psychology and educational science behind what we're doing. I think we can improve that. The other thing for me is, as we start in growing and encouraging women to stay, is one of my personal pet peeves is events, especially like cave and tech events, that are only for women. Because I don't want to be separate and equal. I want to be included in the event of cave divers or tech divers going and doing the things. So, for me, it's don't. I think it might have been Heather who said it. It's a difference without a distinction, right? That I think is commented too much. I mean, this is the first women's specific thing that I've done because I almost don't want to acknowledge it because it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, well, I think all of us probably like hate it when someone says, "Oh, you know, Jill or Mare or Heather or whatever. Oh, what an awesome female diver!" Right? Like it's like, okay, no, we're just a diver. Like, quit modifying it with female. Like I do hate that, but I do see a value in women's events, and I wish we did not have to have a Women Divers Hall of Fame. But I am so freaking proud of that organization. And I realize that it has a really important place because so many women felt so disenfranchised and gathered together to try and come up with a solution to inspire the next generation. And now, you know, we're giving away almost $100,000 a year in scholarships and training grants to young women and men as well. And I'm really, really proud of that. So I guess I'm kind of on both sides of the fence. Like, I don't really want to be labeled as, you know, a great woman diver. I just want to be labeled as a diver or a great diver if I've earned it. But I do see a lot of value in the women's only events and organizations because they bring people in that would not otherwise have the courage to come forward. And so I think that then it has value. I don't want to be exclusive. Like even when I talk about sexism, you know, sexism, when I talk about that, when I write an article about it, I want it to be informational for men, but I want it to be affirmational to women. I want it to be like, okay, like if you've had this happen to you, then, you know, you're not alone. But for men who may not have realized that their behaviors were not appropriate, you know, here's how we feel when this happens. So I don't think we're at the point where we can let go of the differences and just full steam ahead. But I look forward to that day.
Yeah, this is probably the area I have the most conflict over in terms of, you know, how I feel about making that distinction of, you know, a female or a woman's Diver Hall of Fame or a women's event. And you know, I think sometimes in order to bring about change, you have to put something in the light. And I think that's what a lot of this serves to do. I think where we have to be careful is turning it into an identity, right? And that, you know, like, and I apologize to anyone if you guys do this, but like I see the like Instagram posts and stuff and hashtags like hashtag tech diver woman, hashtag women who tech dive, hashtag women who dive. Again, I apologize if anyone does that, but I look at that and I'm like, I want to say, you know, it doesn't have to be such an identity.
Sorry.
That dog is female.
Sorry.
You know, I think we just need to be careful, right? We need to use it as a tool and a forum to get to have a voice. But I also worry, and I think this is Mer's point too, is that we get to a point with it where maybe we're starting to alienate ourselves a bit if it starts to have the appearance that it's exclusive or it's sort of taking on an identity.
Yeah, those are. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think definitely it is, for me, I think it's good to have those type of groups in terms of, you know, getting that initial someone to get into diving. And it's the sense of community, again, it's a sense of community. But, and again, if you don't like just start singling it out, then no harm, no foul. And, you know, having like the girls at Scuba or, you know, like Tech Woman or anything like that, it's just more of another group or a community to belong to.
I agree with that. There needs to be they're great things and events and groups to bring people in and make them feel included. There just has to be a point where a fine line to tread where it doesn't become, I guess, more of an identity than it is a community.
We are the master race.
But yeah, going back to creating a sense of community at your dive shop, I know we had talked about that a little earlier too. I just wanted to mention that Deep Stop does a really good job doing that, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the shop is that we have social dive days like once a month, and so anyone who wants to come can just come on in and dive, and it's really nice because you can meet new people, and it's great. And I think that's helpful in building a sense of community. And even if you don't know anyone, you get to know people, and it's really nice. So, yeah. Let's see. Did anyone have? There we go. So Stephanie Carney from Facebook has a comment. It says, "This is exactly what is needed. More conversations, more stories, more camaraderie, more mentorship, more outreach to make our industry accessible to everyone. Kudos to all of you talented individuals. It is amazing to see all of you speaking your truth."
Nice.
Thanks. Nice. Did anyone have anything else to add about encouraging women or women and men to keep diving or anything like that?
Well, I'll give a plug for the Women Divers Hall of Fame scholarships and training grants, because there's a lot of you even on this call, and I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that may or may not be aware of them. But WDHOF.org, you can go there, and there are dozens of scholarships and training grants, everything from scientific research grants to training grants to diver medic training, all kinds of things. And please apply. I mean, like I said, we give away almost $100,000 a year, but throughout even just the application process, we get to meet new people who are interested in pursuing different levels in diving, and we want to mentor and help them move through to the leadership levels too, because the more women that we have in visible areas of diving, the more accessible it's going to feel to new women coming into the sport.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great opportunity. All right, another one from David Stevens from Facebook. Does it deter you from exploring places that are known to be more patriarchal leaning?
Not for me.
No, I don't.
I led an expedition to Egypt right after the Arab Spring, and that was a really bad time to be a woman alone in the desert in Egypt. So I just go full speed ahead and just try and respect the local culture as much as possible and fit in. But
I
think you
won't
just have
necessarily
to-
go alone though.
Yeah,
I'll go with a group, not alone.
Yeah, I think you just have to know what you're getting into, and you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to operate within that culture, and even if you might disagree with it, you have to be prepared and not let things get to you right away. If you encounter someone making a comment or sort of making an assumption about you, I think you have to just know that that's part of what you're going to have to overcome or navigate. But nothing should short of your safety, I guess, should deter you from doing those things.
Heather, I think that's a great point. And the way I kind of look at the industry is the people who hold these prejudices, whether they're gender related or something else related, that we can't change them. And if we want change to happen in this industry, it has to come from us and the people that we influence. So it's a forward looking, not a backward looking thing that we need to do. And we need to be the change that we want to see. Now, does that mean those of us who've been out there blazing the trail have had to sometimes adapt to play a more stereotypically masculine role, to be more stubborn, to be one of the boys? Does it always have to be that way, though? No, we can control that with how the generations that we influence as instructors, professionals, and role models here of what the industry will look like in 5, 10, and 20 years.
I agree with that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Tom Nelson asked, are there any women-led projects coming up? Several of my female students are always asking about that kind of opportunity. Do you guys know about
I don't know.
I mean, there are lots of women, like including myself and others, that lead expeditions all the time, but there's also nothing stopping any woman interested in leading an expedition from just going for it too. Honestly, like, Beyond the Women Divers Hall of Fame, if you have an idea and you want to launch an expedition, apply to the Young Explorers grants for National Geographic, apply to the Explorers Club Discovery grants. Like, a lot of grants, scholarships, and training opportunities are underrepresented in female applicants. And I think maybe we're all pretty hard on ourselves and we have imposter syndrome and we don't think that we should apply or whatever else. But there's no reason why, if you're sitting back there and you want to go on a woman's-led expedition, that you couldn't be leading that expedition. So I would just say, go for it. Don't be afraid to fail. What would you do if failure didn't matter? Just go for it. I wade through like waist deep rejection letters sometimes, but enough things come through that I've had a really incredible career that I pinch myself over. But I do remember, 20 years ago when I was first applying for things, I thought, oh my God, they're just going to laugh at me like, I'm too young or I'm, whatever. But just go for it. There's no reason why there's any aspect of diving that couldn't be equally represented by men and women.
Yeah, definitely.
And having done expeditions myself, I've never considered whether the leadership was male or female. It's about putting people in the right role and knowing what each people's individual strengths are when you're putting together a team for a week, a month, or 10 years. So I have never sought out projects because of the gender of the person. I've sought out projects because of the goals and the mission and are these people that I think I'm going to mesh with and I want to be covered in duckweed at 2:00 in the morning, hauling bottles up and down the hill,
All right, so Helen Malone from Facebook has a comment. So it says, I'm a female surgeon. One thing that I'm hearing around the edges of this conversation is that there's a certain type of woman that we don't take seriously or don't want to portray ourselves as. We need to be very careful about excluding soft-spoken, pink, less brazen women than we may be or consider ourselves. It's an easy thing to exclude other women who have different gifts. We've learned a hard lesson in some areas of medicine and lost some talented folks.
What a great point. Thank you for making that. I love pink, but but yeah, excellent point.
Yeah. Very fair and agree. I think, we maybe are sometimes reacting to a marketing element and not so much a type of person. And so I agree that we should be careful about that, especially as women, because I think we've talked a lot tonight about inclusiveness and community, and I don't think we would want to alienate anyone.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be the woman that's the quiet, soft-spoken one. We used to do these things when I was working at a different shop, and we'd have like a social event every couple weeks in the winter, and we'd always go out for beverages after, right? Because that's just what you do. And there was one gentleman that, basically didn't talk to anyone. He came, watched the presentation, and as we're like, hey, we're going out to such and such place, grab some wings and beer. And it was like, hey, do you want to come with us? And he did, and so we have to remember that as well. Absolutely. And that's part of, the community building. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's, invited to come along if you want to. And you eventually end up getting to know them, and maybe they're just soft-spoken or maybe they're just not comfortable yet because they don't know anybody. You don't know what they're bringing to the table just because they're quiet.
And I think that's something that would make you a good leader or a good ambassador, is somebody who doesn't necessarily look at men, women, big, tall, but look at shy. Like, okay, so because I'm a bold, outgoing person, does that automatically make me a leader, or does it make me just more willing to bring in people who won't bring themselves in because they're nervous? So I guess creating that community has to include everybody, but it's going to take the bold people to bring the shyer people out, and then you create a greater community in doing that. Yes, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
I mean, it's not necessarily just like the diving industry. It's also out in like regular professional industry as well. Even like general world. Like
Right.
one of the famous lines from Phil Nye is, "You always will learn something from everyone you meet." So, don't just like exclude someone just because their personality clashes with you. I mean, you might not hang out with them, but you'll still learn something from them.
Yeah, I think that those are definitely good points and good ways to look at it.
Sometimes just asking the person, they may not want to go out for the beer and wings, but sometimes just saying, hey, you're invited, makes all the difference.
Yeah, definitely just the gesture at least. So I think this is going to be our last comment. Tom Nelson asked, what challenges do you foresee facing as women instructors and technical divers in 2021?
Rona.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hopefully fewer than 2020.
Yeah, it's all about the coronavirus, really. I mean, we're a lot more isolated and kind of staying home up here in Canada than everyone down in the US. Like, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of shocked to see teaching and travel continuing on, because we're not going to be past this until everybody gets on the bandwagon and does everything they can, which is simple, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, all that crap. We need to all do this globally, so we can get on with things. That's the biggest challenge.
I think that comes into our same thing with building community, and that we're not in a competitive sport. And I think we try to make it that way. There's going to be a lot of adapting that we have to do on the other side of it. It's changed the industry. We've lost businesses that used to be there. So I don't see any of these as unique to being a woman. I see these as just, we're going to have a new normal, whether we're going to have before COVID and after COVID. So.
Well, I think if anything, what we've seen happen with attrition of dive businesses and sort of loss of local community is, I think if there's a lesson, it's that we have to build community more than ever to survive. We have to put down our differences and our stereotypes and biases, and we have to try to come together as a global dive community. That's the only way I think we'll survive, through what is significant economic hardship and also, the impact of, physical, mental, all of that collateral damage that's being done right now that we don't even fully understand.
Well said.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm also kind of throwing it out there. Kind of a lot of this conversation we've been having is more about like challenges for like women in diving, but there on the other hand, we have a whole lot of benefits of being a woman in diving.
Definitely.
So right? We're
Yeah.
women in diving. We have so much more better voices. So I guess we'll throw it out there to you guys. Sorry, Allie, for taking over.
You're fine.
Well, like, what are benefits to that you guys see? You guys have been in the industry for quite a while, or definitely more than I have, of women in diving. What are the advantages that we have?
I see that we don't as women seem to be swept into the competition that men seem to experience. Like I've been on expeditions where I'm the only woman, and there seems to be a lot of pressure amongst the guys to go further, to lay more line, to do this, do that, be stronger, better, whatever. And maybe because I was the only woman, I was just getting applauded for being there. Who knows? But I mean, I of course, pulled my weight and more, but I didn't feel that pressure. I don't feel like I need to compete. And I think most women don't feel like they need to compete, where I think some men, enter the sport and it becomes much more a sense of identity and attached to their masculinity. So in a way, I think of that as an advantage. I didn't feel the same sort of stress level of performance that the guys did. Like if I swam 100 feet into the cave and something was wrong with my gear and I called the dive and turned around and everybody had just spent like 30 hours getting ready for that dive and I aborted it, I didn't feel guilty about it and nobody ever gave me a hard time about it. But if the same thing happened to a guy, there seemed to be a little bit more, jostling and pressure, I guess. So I never felt that pressure.
Here's one thing. I mean, I don't know how to. Let me see if I can say this without pissing people off. But I think one of the challenges. I'm good at pissing people off. That's like half of my occupation, right? Is one of the challenges I think we have as growth as women is still recognizing, especially when we get into tech and cave diving, and there is so few of us. The reason everybody knows my name and Jill's name and Heather's name at dive sites and is because when we're in cave country is because there's like 6 of us that have been in the industry for more than 5 years, right? Like it's like, oh, who's that chick? Like, let me pick from like the list of 6 that it could be. And then the flip side of that is when a woman gets highly publicized doing something, what our industry does do is assume if you put a woman out there demonstrating something, not only are they just demonstrating that skill, representing that agency, they're representing all of women. So if that skill is not done to the utmost high standard, if that picture is not showing the utmost skill, then the conclusion that people are making, the false, crappy conclusion that people are making is, well, that's the best that the women can do because we put them out on the pedestal. And that's something, it's a double-edged sword that like, yes, we shouldn't have to be better to prove ourselves, but guess what? We have to, especially still in cave and tech. I don't think I ever would have gotten to where I've gotten to without working twice as hard as the guys. And at the end, that's part of my journey and it's part of my personality. And I think I've only reaped the benefits of any time, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? But that's where we are in the evolution of some of this, is that if we don't go out there when we put ourselves in the public eye and we don't kick ass, people are going to think we're not capable of kicking ass.
But if you do kick ass, you guys are celebrities.
Well, it's not always pretty being a dive celebrity, although I don't consider myself to be one. But I really, I really hope that a lot of the stuff that women before me, I mean, there are women going back, quite a long ways. And, a woman that used to run the dive boat, the Wahoo, Janet Beezer. Jill, you probably know Janet.
Yeah.
When I think about some of the things she had to overcome to be the captain of a technical dive boat in the 1980s, I am just like, wow, and I'm, yeah. And, I'm really grateful for people like her. And I think, a lot of what Mur's talking about is true. And I think but I also feel that it's unfortunate that we have to be that way or perceive that we have to be that way. And I hope that, for sort of the next generation and the younger divers that are coming up, that stuff starts to go away. And to your point, Jen, like, what are the advantages and the things that women have to offer? Like, I hope that starts to stand out and women are able to move into leadership positions more than perhaps now, where, some of the skills that I think women have, I think Jill hit on a lot of them. Like, we're not always driven by ego or pressure, but I think women maybe just have a different way of thinking about things sometimes, just to generalize, even though I don't like to do that. I think women have a different way of thinking about things, and that translates into maybe a better approach to risk management. And so I think that's a strength that women have. And so I guess I'll leave that there. But yeah, I think that women do have a lot to offer, and it's probably a discussion for another time, but it would be interesting to talk about women in leadership positions in the dive industry more.
I think it's actually freeing. The fact that I, by the nature of my gender or anything else about me, that I don't fit the mold of what people expect when you say GUE Cave and Tech instructor. And that's given me permission to do things differently and potentially innovate and find different ways to teach that other people didn't do because that's the mold. So once you're already outside of the mold, go hog wild and do other things and keep what works. It's, to some extent, it's freeing. There's other parts of it that suck, but it is what it is. And you just have to play with the field that you have and pave a different road for those behind you.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had another comment coming up here from Don Abel. Here we go. He said, I have to say, at least the women let each other talk. Nobody walks over everybody. They're a lot more polite than any guys I know. We could learn something from them.
Do you know what that means? It means we need more booze.
Here's to that, man.
Because I don't want to be known as a well-behaved woman, man. Well-behaved women never accomplished anything.
Awesome.
All right. I think that wraps it up for tonight. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the show. I'm going to wrap up with our viewers, and I'll talk to you guys in just a minute. But thank you so much for all of your contributions and everything for tonight.
No, thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's great chatting with all you ladies, and look forward to meeting you in person one day and hopefully diving together.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, thank you guys so much for joining us for our episode of A Dram of Diving tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We really appreciate all of your support. For those of you on YouTube, you can click right around here. There's a like and subscribe button. And we would really appreciate any contributions you guys can make to our Patreon. Thank you guys so much. I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for our next show. Thanks so much.